Good afternoon. Thanks for joining me. My name is Corey Hart. I'm the product manager at RBI. I appreciate you getting on. I know there's got to be some Orioles fans online from Baltimore, and those of you like me that are Nats fans are nervously anticipating the game at 3. So thanks for taking the time to join me. I'll be running through some different tips and techniques on using SmartCharts Pro. Some things I may have covered in previous webinars I might not get to today. There's a few things that I was exploring just before getting on this call that I thought I might run by you guys. If you do want to see any of these webinars on demand, you can visit the support section on the website. Just click support. There's a definitions page where you can see all the definitions for the various metrics and facets and what is a median, what is an average, etc. And the training tab within the support section is, I'll be recording this webinar, and you can also see previously recorded webinars here down at the bottom of the page. Okay, with that, as I'm going through this, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions bar in the GoToMeeting panel, and I'll either jump to them as we're going through, or I'll be sure to stop at the end and cover anything that I may have missed. My name showing up on there probably is Jonathan Hill, but my name is Corey Hart. He's actually my boss. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. SmartCharts Pro. Most of you are likely familiar with the new interface. We're pretty excited about that. We've gone from 10 metrics to 36 metrics. And we've made a lot of enhancements to the functionality that had been available in RBI Expert and the new SmartCharts Pro. The market gauges are something we introduced earlier this year. This is a great spot to get sort of a lay of the land for, if I'm in DC Metro, or if I change location to my subdivision or my city, etc. Obviously, everything within the application will update with stats relevant to whatever location I've turned on up at the top. These give us a sense of how the most recent month's market performed relative to that same month over the last 5 years. What I mean by that is, while you may have heard some of the reports, obviously we've been putting out our reports about how sales aren't where they were in the DC metro area in 2013. 2013 may have been the high water mark, but this also will give you a sense of how the most recent month's sales compare to the 5-year August average. And we can see we're still above the 5-year August average, even though we're not hitting the 2013 marks for sales. How we can tell this is, for instance, if I'm looking at active listings, the dial is the most recent month, so August 2014. On the 10th of this month, you'll see the September numbers come up. But for August, we can see that active listings are at the 5-year high for August. Where the color breaks in each of these is the 5-year monthly average. So the monthly average is 8,063 active listings. We're at 9,971. Anytime that this dial is at the far right, that means you're at the 5-year peak for that month and whatever indicator you're looking at. Conversely, if the dial is all the way at the left side of the gauge, then you're looking at the 5-year minimum for that month. Be sure to use the scroll bars over to the right and left so you can scroll through other metrics. You can see months of supply is up, but it's still a seller's market in Northern Virginia, obviously, but it's above the 5-year August average. New listings are at the 5-year high. Median sale price is at the 5-year August high, and median list price for actives is above the 5-year average, but not at the 5-year high. So, there's a lot of information you can glean just from this one. This is usually my first stop as soon as the new stats are published, just to get a sense of how the market's performing. These can be embedded. I'll go through embedding at the end when we're getting into interactive charts. But if you want to embed these onto your website, you can do so here. I'll give a little more information on how to embed when we get into the charts. Spotlight and the snapshot are pretty straightforward. YOY, if you're not familiar, YOY means year over year. you're going to always want to compare this month versus the same month last year, not so much MOM, which is month over month, where you're comparing, say, August to July, due to the seasonality, which I'll also cover a bit more when we get into the charts. The Explore section is brand new. This is, I can give an example of how this can and should be used each month, or when you're getting into a new zip code, etc. If I'm on the region level, I can see a variety of metrics, sold listings, new pendings, DOM, etc. The default when I'm on the region is county, but I can also compare all zip codes within Northern Virginia. This is a great way to sort of get a sense of where your zip code sits for whatever metric you're looking at compared to the rest of the region. You can see whether or not you're above or below. Let's say that I'm in South Arlington and I'm looking at median sale price. I can either, the default sort is by 2014, August 2014, or I can look at year to date for 2014 and sort accordingly. So here I can see the most expensive zip code, not surprisingly to folks around here, is Great Falls, and I can see just where the region itself sits. So those that are above this line are more expensive than the regional average. Those below, obviously, less. Another way to look at that is if you're looking at, let's say, Washington, D.C. I had a guy call named Ron. They called about a zip code. I'm going to use a different zip code for this example, but he was going into a listing presentation, and he was looking at a zip code, and he called and said, "Is this a real trend, or what am I seeing here? I'm seeing double-digit % increases year over year in price. What's going on there, or is it just a monthly hiccup?" He was in Logan Circle, but let's look at, for example, Anacostia. So here I've sorted the county or the city by zip codes, and we can see that Anacostia, while it's not anywhere near the most expensive zip code within the district, it is leading Anacostia here. It's up 23.4% for the month of August. When you're getting into zip code level stats, or especially when you're getting into subdivision level stats, it's important to also take note of the year-to-date, because then you have a more quantifiable, a more relevant data set. You have a more complete data set. Some of these zip codes might only have 4 or 5 sales, or even if you're in a county that doesn't have a huge number of monthly volume, take a look at the year-to-date stats. When we do that, we can see that it's not just a monthly blip for Anacostia. It's an ongoing, consistent trend throughout the year. So sales from January through August of this year, the median sale price is 20.5% versus sales from January through August in 2013. Now, why could that be? Was it just low supply? What's driving that? This particular zip code, the median sales price, to see those big increases. So what you can do from there is dive into the charts, and just while I'm on here, you can export any of these views into Excel and take them with you, manipulate further, etc. So be sure to use that export if you're an Excel fan like I am. It's a pretty slick feature, and also these, like I said, can be changed. If we switch this to median DOM, the default sort is from lowest to highest. So we can see that there's one zip code whose year-to-date, 20006. Half the homes have sold in 2 days or less. I'm guessing that's not a very high volume zip code, but back to the zip code that we wanted to look at and see what was going on with it. So this is 20020. This is the Anacostia zip code. What I have here is I went ahead and preset this, but it's pretty simple to compare locations within the application. So just to show you how I did it, I can add 20152. And then this serves as my legend while So the blue is Anacostia, the red is Logan Circle. These are, just so you know, these are the 4 zip codes that had the highest median sale price jump year over year. I'm going to remove Chantilly just so we're looking at the biggest price appreciating zip codes in DC so far this year. We can dive into what might be happening there. Sometimes it's because of supply and demand. Low supply, high demand obviously is going to put upward pressure on pricing, but it can also be a matter of it's a relatively affordable zip code compared to its neighbors, and that can drive up the median sale price. So now that I have these 4 zip codes turned on, the default view is foreclosed sales. I can change this to show new pendings, etc., or I can add metrics if don't already have a compare turned on. But when we look at the supply and demand, so remember these are the 4 zip codes in DC that have had the highest appreciation year to date. And here's why. The months of supply are extremely low. So in Logan Circle, it's basically at 1 month of supply. So if no new listings came on the market and you're just looking at the last 12 months worth of sales and averaging that out, based on that average sales pace over the last 12 months, it would take less than 1 month for all the active inventory to sell. That's extremely tight, and that's why 2005, even though it's one of the more expensive, it's an expensive zip code, prices are continuing to shoot up there. While these look to be obviously much higher than 20005, we can see that 2.2 months for 16th Street Heights and 2.8 months for West End Foggy Bottom, the West End Foggy Bottom zip code. Anacostia and Hillcrest, this zip code, we can see it's at 4.1 months. I'm not sure. I think that's higher actually than the DC, than the Washington DC months of supply, and it is. We can see that DC overall only has 1.8 months of supply. So basically, if no new listings came on in the district, all the active listings at month's end would sell within 2 months' time. That's a very strong seller's market, especially considering that the DC metro area at large is slowing down a bit. DC is still continuing to be tight, and that's evidenced by supply and demand, by months of supply. But this zip code, 20020, even though it was the highest year-over-year appreciation for year-to-date median sale price, it's at 4.1 months of supply. Generally, 4 to 6 months is considered balanced. So something else must be at play there. And if we change these, our high appreciating zip codes, to look at price per square foot, say, then we can see that this is a much more affordable place to live than the district at large and these other high appreciating zip codes. So low prices are most likely the main driver of price appreciation in this particular zip code, more so than supply and demand dynamics. I can switch this over to median sold price, and we can see the median sold price in this zip code is, granted it's 23.4% above last August, it's still at 247.4, which is much lower than the district, which is at 475. Just to make sure this isn't just a blip for that month, and we can tell it probably isn't, but be sure to leverage the quarters view. So the default view is going to be months. I can switch this and look at quarters. And so here I can see for Q2 2014. Obviously, once the stats for this month are published on the 10th, you'll also get Q3 2014 metrics as well. So for the quarter, it's 235K, whereas the district is 515K. So that's a place where there are investment opportunities most likely here. It's an active market, and so if I'm going to a either I'm advising a developer or if I'm going into someone that's considering buying, then this is the kind of stat, as well as the change from previous year, that I'd want to show. So I can do change from previous year on median sale price and see this is my left axis is now percent increase or decrease, and every one of these is no longer showing the median sale price, it's showing the percent above zero. I can take this back 10 years to see when that trend started happening for these particular zip codes, or if I'm elsewhere. We can see that's not the cleanest graph, but I can always export this to Excel by downloading. Let's turn these off, and just one more example of how, because I really feel that the months of supply metric, which is new in SmartCharts, which we didn't have in Expert, is one of the most, it's driving almost every one of these other metrics, unless there's an outlier like a very low cost area surrounded by overpriced areas, not overpriced, but more expensive areas. So another example of that is if we switch this, so we're looking at, let's get back to months of supply. Months, we'll get back to actual values. There are two areas within the DC metro area that will likely continue to see price gains. A lot of the outlying suburbs might be flattening out a bit, and that's DC. So if I switch this to show DC, set that, and Prince George's County. Switch this to 3 years just so to make it more legible. So if we look at the pricing trends for these two locations, we can see that obviously DC is a very expensive place to live. Affordability is becoming a concern. Prince George's County is more affordable. When we look at the change from previous year, we can see that both of these areas, for the most part, have been seeing, I mean, this is a 20% year-over-year increase line. While it doesn't look all that impressive on this chart, this is 20% increase. This is double-digit increases even as far as August 2014, versus the region at large. Is flattening out a bit. This purple line is DC Metro at large, 0% increase there. So the main driver for the DC, like I said, for the DC increases is that supply and demand months of supply is so low in the district, 1.85. The driver for price increases in Prince George's County is more because it has further to go from where it bottomed out. But that's where more, it's becoming a hotter area as more and more folks are looking for affordable housing, obviously, compared to the district and some counties in Northern Virginia. I think I've beaten that to death. I apologize. I kind of went off on a tangent. How else can we use smart charts? The most important thing is that you get comfortable with just general usage of the application itself. In order to nail 4 or 5 different metrics that you're comfortable with and you feel your client will be comfortable with as you're explaining it to them. So maybe that's just looking at new pendings, or just looking at median sales price, or median days on market, etc. I'll get into a bit more advanced metrics that are, I think they're fascinating, but they might not necessarily be something you share with the client. What you can share with the client is if you turn on, say, the 10-year chart, this is a good way to explain the seasonality of the market. I'm going to back up to Northern Virginia just to get more general trends. So this is new pending activity over 10 years. And we can see, spring, winter, spring, winter. If you're talking to a buyer, then you might, if you're talking to a seller, then you're probably going to want to show this January, February to say, hey, let's get on the ball. If you want to move this year, now's the time. If you're talking to a buyer, this might not necessarily be something that motivates them because they might see, that doesn't really necessarily say that much. But the seasonality comes into play with almost every indicator that we have because of supply and demand. More people looking to buy in the spring as well as more people selling in the spring. But we can compare how new pendings compare with new listings. So we can see when new listing activity picks up, you can see that it generally gets out in front of when contract activity starts to hit a month or two earlier. Like in January 2014, we started seeing new listings really pick up. And that's been the trend in the DC metro area of late, is new listings are exceeding last year's numbers while sales aren't necessarily keeping up with last year's pace. And that's why we see active listings finally start to pick up. Inventory, while it's 52% higher than where we were last year at this time, we need to keep in mind that even though we're above that 5-year average in Northern Virginia, we're still not anywhere near the inventory bubble that we had when people, if we change this to change from previous year, this is showing the actual values. We change this to change from previous year, we can see just how crazy it got in the time, those of you that have been selling since the 2000s remember this sort of dark time. And this is what happens when this red line is contract activity, and we can see year over year decreases of 28%, 25%, et cetera, back in 05, 06. And we can compare that to new listing activity was picking up at 50%, 36%, 43% year over year. And those two in combination are what led to this. People were selling and people were trying to sell and nobody was buying because of the, because of the bubble. Lately in DC Metro and even in Baltimore Metro to some degree and some of the rural areas even, like I said, new listings have started to pick up. If I switch this just to look at a 1-year view, we can see that new listings have now been increasing. So this is sellers entering the market, 50% increases. I'm sorry, this is active listings, but that's because new listings have been up and sales, contract activity has been down. These two coupled together is what caused inventory to go up. Again, it's going up, but we're not. This is more of we think it's more of a normalization of the market. It was so tight last year and the last 2-3 years. This is more of a normalization of the market, and we're still in a seller's market. Granted, it's more on the balance. It's more leaning towards balance than craziness, and frenetic activity of last year. So use these charts to educate yourself on sort of the dynamics at play when we're talking about active listings. A lot of the headlines are just going to be talking about inventories way up. Well, last year at this time, or early last year, the main headline nationally and locally was, where's all the inventory? This is, we need more listings, we need more listings. Well, now we've gotten it, and now all the headlines are sort of tilted more towards the negative aspect of more inventory. But, you need to keep in mind that 10-year view. We're not here, okay? The other thing to keep in mind is the seasonality of pricing trends. Pricing trends, so this is the median sold price. A lot of folks, intuitively it makes sense that sales go up in the spring and new listings go up in the spring, and then active inventory, it's not quite as hot of a market in the winter, and that makes sense. But that impacts the sales prices. That impacts the prices of new listings. So here we can see, in the spring, winter, etc. So this is a good chart. I actually used a similar chart. A friend of mine is relocating down to, where's he going? North Carolina for work. So they're taking care of his reload and everything, so he has less pressure to get the price he definitely would like to get, but he's thinking about selling right now. I'll pull up a chart like this just to make sure he's aware of the impact that comes from trying to sell in this late in the year. Maybe you might consider waiting till February or March. The other thing that we can see, so this is the median sold price. Some of these, it's basically a 30 to 45 day lag in general. And we can see that lag. It's basically the median sold price is based off of things that went to contract 30 to 45 days earlier. So here we can see that the actual new pending prices, the price appreciation starts to go up. It's a leading indicator is what we refer to it as. If you're looking at prices in contract activity for new pendings versus sales. Sometimes sales, if you look at this chart, you think that June is typically the high water mark. That's when folks are getting the most for their home. Well, keep in mind that sales are generally had a ratified contract 30 to 45 days earlier if it's a standard sale. So really the peak time is in May. But it starts to go up, sort of bottoms out in December, even though if you're looking at this chart, it might look like the bottoming out for the sales price is in January. So December is, I actually just did an analysis that we're working with Washingtonian on where I used the interactive charts and downloaded some things. This is where I'm going to go off a bit just because I think it's pretty interesting, and also I'd recommend looking at the seasonality of new listings and contract activity when you're thinking about when you might want to go on vacation as a realtor. Winter vacation is probably a good time to do it, but make sure you're back by March. And I say that because I took all these different charts, and I'm not saying this is what you do, but this is all based off of interactive charts. This looks pretty nasty, but just to quickly talk through it, this is the 10-year average for these calendar months. So the 10-year average median sale price, the 10-year average median list price for new pendings. So to talk about how you want to pay attention, now that we have stats on new pendings and the importance of paying attention to those new pending stats as well as the sold stats, so looking at the median list price for new pendings versus median sold price for sales, is looking at this, it looks like January and February, so the dark red are those. This is showing the percent difference for the month of January over the last 10 years over the yearly average. So it's basically saying, as we can see, January's 10-year average in the DC metro area is 338. The average overall for all year is 368. So when we're just looking at the sold price, it looks like January is the bottom mark for, that's when buyers might want to hurry up and look, find some deals. People have been on the market for some time, and there might be more negotiating leverage. But when we look at this for median list price new pendings, we can see that it actually, December is the low water mark in terms of the calendar month for the year. So this is not the time that I'd say I want to sell my house or list it is November or December because of this. There's less demand, and that drives down the pressure on pricing. Likewise with new listings, we can see for new listings, the month of December, that's when the median list price is lowest for people entering the market. Whereas April, these green months, that's when prices are highest. That means if you aren't comfortable with the percent difference, I mean, this is, on average in June, the June monthly average over 10 years is $31,000 higher than the yearly average. So $31,000 premium for folks that are selling in May, June, or like I said, you can see how the green starts earlier on new pendings. So May, folks that sell in May on average are getting $26,000 more than folks selling throughout the year. if you're selling in December, it's $23,000 less. So that I don't know if this all makes sense, but I just thought it was an interesting view of the importance of seasonality. And anytime that you're talking with a buyer or seller, make sure you give them the context of where we are in the sales season. And that's another reason to always pay attention to the YOY change and not the month-over-month change. Back to the product itself, some of the new stats that we have. If anybody on the call is a short sale expert or has dabbled with short sales, you know the pain that can come from short sales. My brother actually just went through the short sale process, and he was calling me all the time saying, "What is going on here? Should I find a new realtor? We got this contract, but the bank. Why is this not going through?" One of the new stats that we have, on top of median days on market and average days on market, so this again shows the seasonality of the market, and I'll switch to Baltimore Metro for this one. So this is for Baltimore and its surrounding counties. So the median days on market there is seasonal. But we have new metrics that we've added. One is median contract to settle, and I'm going to switch this just to a one-year view so that we can turn on multiple series and it'll look okay. We'll switch to bar view. So median days on market is pretty straightforward. The other new thing that we have is median contract to settle. This is saying how long is it taking folks once they get to contract, once they have a ratified contract, how long is it taking before ultimate closing? And that's where I mentioned earlier about the 30 to 45-day lag for some of our sold statistics. If you're looking at median sale price, it's actually for things that went to contract a month or month and a half earlier. But this is getting a sense of half the homes that sold in August in Baltimore Metro were in contract for 40 days before settlement. The other new metric is median days to settle or average days to settle. Median days to settle is basically the sum of these two steps. So original list to contract is here. Contract to closing is here. This, median days to settle, is the combination of both. So this is a good chart to provide your customers that are wondering how long this process might take. It helps to set expectations. If you want to set expectations, on the high side, it's not these are still relevant, although the outliers that take longer can influence the average more than the median. So the average days on market is 71 days. You might look at the average contract to settle is likely going to be a bit higher than the median contract to settle. We can see it's 49 days. So before we were looking at half the homes that sold were in contract status for 40 days or less. We can see the average, since some of the outliers that take longer can skew the average. It's 49 days. And for average days to settle, which is the combination of these two, it's up to 113 days. So, 3 to 4 months, 4 to 5 months, whatever it is, that's something where you can, set the expectations up front, help them start planning if they are moving, when, perfect case, hopefully it's going to be earlier than this, but this gives a good view of how long it generally takes to sell homes. You can switch this to see, how long it might take for homes in their price range. So let's say you have a client that's selling a place for in the 200 to 300K. We can see whether or not it takes longer or is the same amount of time. If I only have one of these turned on, then I can compare sold prices or price ranges. I can turn on various price ranges and see which ones are selling fastest. But back to the new metric, so here we can see that the lower priced are moving faster, and let's see if there's any difference in contract time. So the lower priced ones are actually taking longer during the contract phase. That's kind of interesting. You all might have an answer for why that is. I don't at this point, now that I'm just looking at it. But The other new metric, or it's a new metric, but another way to look at this, which is back to the short sale issue, the average contract to settle, so we'll turn off sold price and we'll turn on the bank mediated facets. Average contract to settle, so this is for all homes, 49 days sit in contract status before ultimately closing. Foreclosures, let's see whether or not those take longer or shorter. It's about the same, pretty consistent with all home types. Standard sales, the yellow, those are taking a shorter time in Baltimore Metro on average to get through the contract phase. But then let's turn on short sales. So you're a short sale person and your client's coming, let's say you have a buyer that's interested in a short sale. Show your buyer this, especially if you have a standard sale that you think might be a pretty close match. Show them this. Okay, this green line is the amount of time short sales are spending in contract prior to closing. So those that successfully closed in August 2014 were in contract for 130 days. That's a long time. That's time when people like my brother start getting frustrated at their realtor, even though it's out of their realtor's hands. This is a really good chart to try to understand. You go to the definitions page that I showed earlier so that you get comfortable with what this is indicating. But this is a great way to, A, set expectations for your short sale seller, and B, give your buyer who's torn between a short sale and a foreclosure or a standard sale, and yeah, the short sale looks like it's the best of the three. Make sure they're aware of this issue. This isn't just anecdotes and that people are aware of what happens and the trouble people have with banks trying to get the short sale approved. But this is objective data that you can show to help set their expectations. Another sort of depressing look at the difference between short sales and other types of sales can be viewed by another new metric it's in the supply and demand category, even though it's not a perfect fit there, but we definitely wanted to get it into the product, but it wasn't a standalone thing. So seller success rate. What this is showing is of all homes that were in pending status that left pending status, so not those that stayed in pending, meaning those that, like the short sales that stayed in pending for 140 days and might not have closed yet, they're just sitting there. This isn't looking at those that stay in pending status from month to month. This is saying of those that were in pending status, that left pending status, they either closed successfully or they fell through. They either went back to active, were unlisted, taken off the market altogether. The contract didn't go through to a successful closing. For all homes, we can see 82% success rate. So you might hear about fallout rate or fail rate. We took the more positive spin, I guess, on it. And this is the success rate. So 82% of pendings that left pending, 82% successfully closed. And we can see over 3 years, it's been pretty consistent. January appears to be an odd time. I don't know if that has something to do with bank processes or people just, they've been on the market for a year. They're sick of this thing. I'm no longer waiting. They take it out. So 76% in January for all home types, 82% of late. You can also look at this on a quarterly basis. Smooth it out a bit. We can see first quarter tends to be lower. More fall through in the first quarter than in later quarters. But the more interesting piece of this, especially for people that are doing short sales, is this. 44% success rate for short sales. Now, as you're doing your business planning, if you know the short sale system and you've got some folks in banks that you're a facilitator and you got this thing down, you know the ins and outs of it, and obviously, that's something that you can market. I can get ahead of, 44% of these 66% of these are failing. My success rate is 80% or whatever it is. But if you're not in that market and you're considering getting in there, then just keep in mind that this is not a very if we just look at it on a monthly basis, having 60% of things that two different parties come to agreement on, the seller and the buyer, they're in agreement, 60% of those are falling through. That's something you need to keep in mind as you're doing your business planning, whether or not you want to get into the short sale game or not. So this, look at the definitions. If I went through it too quickly or if it still doesn't make sense, look at the definition for success rate, and especially if you're a short sale, if you dabble in short sales or you're an expert on this, get comfortable with this as well to help set expectations or show that you'll exceed these low expectations. If you're just going, so I didn't get through all the metrics. We have price per square foot, pricing ratios, so that's your median sold price to original list price ratio. We can see the difference between alls, homes, and short sales. But if you don't want to dive into the charts necessarily until you're more comfortable, I'd recommend taking your iPad with you and running through charts relevant to the listing. If you're just going somewhere quick and just need a quick hitting report, get to, let's say that you're in South Riding, Virginia, which is where I live. I work in Rockville. So run to South Riding, Virginia, click on the reports tab, open up let's say you're going to a townhouse listing presentation. You've got your CMA all set. You want to have some supporting documentation, and we have heard from a lot of folks that say that this is something that really is differentiating them from folks that are just showing up at listing presentations just with their CMA. Pull a local market insight report for all home types and townhouses within their area. The version that you're going to see once it's loaded doesn't have branding since I'm using my admin account, but this will have your branding since it'll say John Q Realtor. It'll have your phone number and your broker up top. Take this with you, and definitely get comfortable with what each of these different things is showing. This is month over month. This is year over year. New listings versus year to date. Are listings up or down? Folks are obviously going to be interested in the median sold price changes. Also includes year to date. So even if month over month is down, explain this is a low volume area, but year to date we're up 1.3%. So however you want to interpret that, and also get into the report for townhouses, and we include some verbiage to help you with that narrative, to call out some of the important indicators. And if nothing else, just take it to an open house. It'll have your branding on it, and leave it there for folks to pick up. Okay, I'm out of time. I do want to see if there are any questions. Let's see, and I'll run late for however many questions there are. What tab is this view under? Market activity. So the market activity, the way I got to that, the default display, just go to, see here, being a South Riding resident, I can see, man, sales are a 5-year low, listings are, I just think this is a very important thing to use. But anyway, the default is going to be dashboard. When I clicked on the charts, the default view was that market activity chart. So this, I'll get it back to where it would have been in the 1-year view. It's all within this charting space. That's how you get to all the different metrics and time ranges and home type facets, etc. is from here. I can switch to different categories here, and when I switch to a different category, that's where trends relevant to, so pricing trends gives me median list price for new pendings versus active listings, etc. So I can see median list price for active listings versus median list price for new pendings, and I can see how overpriced or how fairly priced active inventory is for, let's say I'm just looking at townhouses. I can see that what's selling is actually less than what the active market is, what folks on the active market are pricing at. So that's guidance that I can give to my buyer or seller, especially a seller. Say, hey, if we get it somewhere in between these two, you might have a better, will have a better shot at moving more quickly. But back to your question, the market activity chart is all within the Charts tab. That's really the meat of SmartCharts, is this application that we've built to give you access to, all these different metrics all in one place. If I have something turned on, like median sold price to original list price, and let's say that I also turn on average sold price to original list price, or just while we're here, let's say that I have average sold price to OLP based off of how long it takes homes to sell. And I'll move this back to Northern Virginia. This is, again, under the charts section, but here I can see for the last 3 months, I can change my view, and we can see the impact of homes that stay on the market for too long, the impact that has on your original list price. I gave that short notice just because I ran out of time, but this is an important chart to try to understand, and I went through it in more detail in previous webinars, so be sure to take a look at those. How do we embed? Great. I need to get to that really quickly for those of you still on. To embed, there's a few options. So let's say that I wanted to embed this chart while we're on it, and I wanted to say, put a header around it saying, take a look at the effect of not pricing your home right. The market's going to figure it out. Come to me, and we'll get your home price right if you want to move quickly, and we'll get you 100%, or however you want to frame it. Don't use that, obviously. But let's just say I want to embed this chart. Then I go down to embed. The other options are view as Excel, grab a JPEG of this, and put it into an email. Emails don't like iframes, so we don't recommend you embed into an email. But let's say you want to embed. Click that embed bar, and however I've built that chart within that Charts tab, however I have it built is going to be the embedded version that shows up. There are two options. There's auto update version and there's fixed date range version. 9 times out of 10, our customers are going to use the auto update version. This is a set it and forget it kind of thing, where once our September stats come in on October 10th and they're in our system, your website will be updated. The fixed date range version will set this chart that you've embedded to always stay on the most recent month that was there at the time that you've embedded. So if I pick fixed date range version, throw this onto my website, August 2014, this chart is not going to continue to update. Use that if you're a blogger and you're talking about, if you're putting narrative around what's showing up in the chart. But if you just have a standalone stats section where you're focusing on certain zip codes or home types or what have you, use auto update version so it'll update automatically. Pick your size ranges. We took some of the standard web templates out there and pick sizes that should fit. If you have a big space, you might use the 785 by 440. If you just have you want to put some in the right rail, then 300 by 280 is the smallest it'll go. And I'm just going to simply copy and paste this. Well, let's say I'm picking this. This code will update. Looks ugly, but so Control C, or you can right click and copy. And then I'm going to go into my web editor. So we have an exact site. Every CMS is going to be very similar to this in terms of there's a what you see is what you get view, a what WYSIWYG view that's usually the default. So I already have this page set up, but let's say put chart here and impact of DOM on original list price. That's just, you'll think of something better. So here in the WYSIWYG, I can see, what that is. I don't know HTML. I'm not a web person, so I'm a realtor. I don't want to get into all this code stuff. Well, all these CMS systems are going to have an HTML view. And this, you don't need to know how to use HTML necessarily. I go and find, where did I put that? Impacts of DOM on original list price. Okay, it's right there. I can then paste that snippet that I'd copied from the charts, paste it right there, and then go back to my design view. And now I see my chart. This chart is going to auto-update. I can save it. Say I'll save it as a draft, preview it, see what it looks like. So these are some of the other charts that I've embedded over of late. And now my chart's here. I can go back into the what you see is what you get and work on the formatting around it. We recommend you put, the embed itself isn't going to help your SEO, but you want to put language around your charts, location language, stat language, etc., if possible, and that'll help your SEO. If you're not worried about SEO, then you might not want to muddy it up with narrative, but it's up to you whether or not how much you put around the chart. But the chart itself, this is going to update. So on October 10th, when new stats come out, this will be the last 3 months through September. So now I've got something. I don't even need to come back to it. Then you can reference your website rather than sending people to RBI. While we do have a share function, where was I? There is the option if you're on Twitter or Facebook, etc., to share the chart. So what this will do, it'll point folks that click on your chart in Twitter. It'll point them back to getsmartcharts.com. They don't have to be customers to see this view. Obviously, if you're trying to point them into the application, they would have to be customers. So that's more for your use, or to walk them through it on your laptop or on your iPad. But this is a public accessible share page where I can then put this on Facebook or put it on Twitter, and I put my nice language around it. Here's something showing blah, blah, blah. When I tweet that, and I'm not going to tweet it, but if I did tweet that, then it gets my brand out there, somebody who's paying attention to stats, but it does drive traffic back to RBI, which isn't necessarily something that is going to help you in that. It will help your brand, though, because if people see tweeting about market stats, then that's a step forward. But the ideal thing to do is to put these charts onto your website and then tweet links back to your website talking about these charts. Okay, I could go in and let's say that I just have a median sale price chart here, and I'm in that one zip code where prices are up 20%. That chart's going to automatically update. I go look at my own website, see, wow, prices are up, tweet that out or put it on Facebook and link back to my site. And that's the kind of thing that I know I'm not a realtor, but what I'm interested in, partially because I'm in stats. But even when I was at AOL, as a homeowner, I just wanted to know what was going on with pricing. And not necessarily I'm not the best homeowner, so the whole thing about warranties and all that stuff, yeah, it's okay content, but if you're putting out things about market activity, especially local market activity, that's something that, users, even folks that aren't in the market right now, homeowners are interested in. So if you can do that, put it on your website, put it onto, either into your newsletters or on your social media, then that's obviously a win. Few questions. Okay, so I think that's it. Hopefully that helped. I did go long. Sorry, I guess I'm just amped up for this Nats game and had too much coffee. If you need anything, my email address is Corey@rbintel.com. So feel free to email me if you'd like clarification on anything. Again, that's Corey, COREY@rbintel.com, and I can try to help you out. Okay. Again, this recording will be posted on that site. You can also see other recordings maybe I did a better job on. So go to that support section on SmartCharts. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your time. Go Nats. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye.